right, everybody. It is 5:35, and it looks like most of us are here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Nice to see everybody again. My name is Tiffany from Circle Up Education. You're a good friend and facilitator, one of your facilitators for this Policy Innovation Workshop. So I want to welcome you all back. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to kick off our work for this evening, and then I'll quickly be handing it off over to Brian to do some of our introductory kind of overview of where we are at in this process. Am I sharing my slides? Okay, cool.
Yes, we can see.
Awesome. For some reason, it's not showing the green outline and box today, so I might be asking for your feedback throughout this evening. But again, welcome back. Policy Innovation Workshop on Community Safety. So glad to see all of your faces back again, and glad we didn't scare you off the first time. But today is session 2 of our work together. And so our first section of today is going to be giving you all a warm welcome back, and then we're going to review the agenda and also some logistics in terms of nuts and bolts and what to expect for this evening and also moving forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian to share a little bit about where we are at in this process and reminding us of what the long-term goals are.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be here with you. I had a chance to watch the first session, and it looked like it was a great session. So I'm excited about the work that's going to be done here. As you can see from, am I covering this entire slide, or am I just covering the expectations of outcomes?
I think it's all you, Brian.
Okay.
And also,
Perfect.
do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. I'll introduce myself. Brian Matthews. I'm a captain here with the police department, and I'm also part of the city staff coordinating team for this innovation project. I know a lot of the folks on here. I got to interview a couple of you, and for those that I haven't met yet, I'm looking forward to doing that. So here's where we are in the process and kind of what we hope to accomplish today. You can see the acronym PAUSE on this slide. In this session, we're going to be covering the P and the A. So the P stands for packaging our challenge, and for assessing uncertainty, and we'll get into the details of what that entails here in a little bit. In future sites, or future sessions rather, we're going to be doing some solution testing and evidence-informed decision-making. And in the break in between, we're going to get to hopefully understand some of our stakeholders, do some homework and do some empathy work, and we'll talk about that tonight as well. One of the things that I was asked to do is to just talk about some of the expectations of outcomes of this process, because I think there were some questions surrounding that. So I just want to cover some of the things that have been covered just in previous staff reports, but also by the coordination team here. So the outcomes for this work are really going to be the byproduct of the evidence-informed decision-making portion of the lean innovation process. And so the teams are going to work together to identify possible solutions to the assigned challenges. And I know we're going to talk about team makeup and the challenges here in a minute. And then the findings for the teams are going to be presented to the Council Budget and Finance Committee in mid-April with follow-up presentations to the full council at a later date. And all of that's supposed to take place before the adoption of the fiscal 22 budget. So in terms of the presentation to the Council Budget and Finance Committee, each team is going to present findings and recommendations. And then the project coordination team is going to present a combined package of recommendations, which will include an initial staffing and budget analysis. Part of our role as the coaches in the coordination team is to kind of identify areas of overlap or differences between working teams and to help navigate some of those challenges. And then we're here really to identify, we're not here to identify fully developed proposals or initiatives at this point, but rather to identify concepts that can be the foundation for some pilot programs moving forward. And it's also to identify additional work that needs to be done. So this is going to be an ongoing process. I know we have an 8-week time frame here, but this work will continue, indefinitely beyond those 8 weeks. So the goal really is to identify short, mid-range, and long-term solutions, what we can do today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. And I'll turn it over to whoever's next.
Wonderful. I'll take it back over for me, Brian. So that is an overview of our lean innovation process and what the next steps are going to be for session 3 and session 4. So just to reiterate a little bit more, some of our goals for today is to set you all up for that process. We're going to be engaging in some trust building and developing team agreements in your working teams. Once we assign groups and create team agreements, we are going to be deepening our understanding of the challenge areas that you all have been assigned, thinking about what do we know, what do we not know, who are the primary stakeholders, and what questions do we need to ask them. And then from there, we're going to review tools and information for you all to complete your homework before our session number 3. So for the agenda today, we'll go into team agreements, we'll take a break, we'll work on packaging your challenge and assessing uncertainty that Heather is going to lead us through, as well as then taking a break, understanding stakeholders and homework prep, and then we're going to wrap up. So this evening should probably fly by, similar to how our first evening did. We are going to now take some time to go over the team assignments, and just a brief reminder around some Zoom etiquette reminders. If there are any tech issues that you have and you have trouble logging back in or anything like that, please feel free to message our team at haywardsafe@gmail.com. You want to keep yourself muted, have your camera on, use the chat only if you have questions or you want to share something directly with me to get input on. You can change your name and your pronouns on Zoom. So you want to go over to your picture box where your video is. There's going to be 3 dots that come up in the top right corner. If you hover over there, if you click that, there's going to be a drop-down menu that says rename. So you can feel free to use that as well. And of course, we're going to be interacting full force on Zoom using raise hand button, chat box, breakout rooms. And Kelly and I, city manager, will be floating around in the different breakout rooms throughout the session today while you're with your coach, just so we can peek in, provide support, answer any questions, but just ignore us if we come in and we'll wave hi and you could just wave back, and that will be enough of an acknowledgement. So I'm going to hand it over to Terrence to go over the process in which we were able to boil down different topics and develop the teams and working groups.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Terrence, one of the coordinators. So for the activity that we did when we were in groups last week, we asked you to identify challenges that we would be discussing during this workshop and put them on the sticky notes. So what we did after that meeting is we organized those challenges that were similar to others into overarching categories. And then we took the most voted on with the red dots challenges and broke them down into separate questions or categorical questions of a challenge that we would have the groups tackle this week. So we took those overarching questions and we put them in the survey that you all responded to see where your interest individually was in each challenge question. Now, for a couple of the questions, the challenges that were asked, there wasn't as much interest in those challenge questions, but we wanted to make sure that they were still incorporated into the project itself. So we distributed the context of those other challenge questions into the rest of the challenge questions that were chosen, so that people who were interested in those redistributed challenge questions could still be able to touch on those in different in the different challenge questions. And then based on your interest in which challenge question you showed interest in the survey, we organized you into that particular group along with others that showed interest in that that challenge question as well. So that was the process in which we organized these groups, and it is on the website, and you'll see in the coming slides where you are in your group according to which challenge question you had the most interest in. And I'll pass it back to Tiffany.
Awesome. Thank you, Terrence. All right. So yes, it was a very inclusive and inclusive process in which we developed the team assignments. Thank you for the coordinating team for putting that together. So you should have already received your group assignments, but just in case you didn't, there are 5 different groups, A, B, C, D, E, 5 groups. So team A is communication and relationship building. Your staff coach will be Laurel James. Team B is also communication and relationship building, since there is so much interest in this area. Your staff coach is Nicholas Mullins. Group C is mental health, and you are going to be led by and supported by Brian Matthews. Group D is on homelessness, and you will be supported by Mary Thomas. And the last group, which is resource allocation, will be led by Monica Davis. And so you all are going to be engaging in this like really vigorous process where you're packing challenges together, learning about stakeholders, testing your assumptions, and then developing solutions. So it's going to be a really a really multifaceted process. And so we want to make sure that we set you all up for success. So we have a few floating staff that will be able to provide support around research, around tech support, and also connections to other staff members, or also other people on your team who you might want to get in touch with throughout this process. So if that's the case, you can reach out to Daniel, Rosalinda, or Terrence, and we'll make sure to share this contact information with you offline as well. And so in order to set you all up for success for working with your team, we are going to be engaging in a process for developing team agreements. But before we do that, we want you to take some time to get to know each other. So you are going to be breaking out into your first breakout rooms so you can meet with your team, see who else is on your team, and understand each other's why. So in a moment after I explain this slide, we are going to be breaking up in our teams, and you're going to share 3 prompts: your name, a color that describes how you're feeling today. So for me, I'm feeling like a fuchsia pink for some reason. Don't have to explain, just say the color. Why did you decide to be a part of this policy innovation project? Were you driven by, you're, born and raised in Hayward, you have kids in Hayward, you work in Hayward? What is it that drew you to this project and, made you say, I want to commit 4 of my evenings to this work? And then what drew you specifically to this topic area that you're in? So every person in your group will have a chance to share. Your facilitator/coaches will share first, and then call on one person at a time going across the screen. So making sure everybody has a chance to share their piece. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and move out into breakout rooms. All right, and we'll go ahead and paste these questions into the chat box as well. All right, everybody, breakout rooms will be closing in about 2 seconds. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you and your group had a chance to finish up in terms of those introductions. If you didn't, don't worry, you'll have plenty of more time to talk with your groups in these upcoming discussion sections. So we're going to start the process of creating and brainstorming your team agreements now. So I need you all to either take out a piece of paper or a note document on your computer. Okay. Let me know if you got your paper document. Give me a thumbs up in your screen. Okay, good. Okay, awesome. All right. So for this process of team agreements, it's going to be really similar to what we did in our first session. So do you see brainstorming team agreements on the screen? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Heather. All right, welcome back, everybody. So how many of you, for team leads, you can raise your hand. If you still have people that need to share their needs, raise their hand. You have one person, two people. Okay, awesome. All right, so we're gonna keep going. And if you didn't finish sharing, when I put you back into your rooms, you can finish sharing there. So now that you have shared out, the next step is to ask clarifying questions of one another. So imagine your coaches are like listing out everybody's needs, and these are going to be kind of like your foundation in working together as a group, right? Like this creates your container and how you work together, your intentions for working together. And so the idea is that these agreements are like, you're going to do your best to practice these when you're working together. It might not be perfect all the time, but at least you acknowledge that these are your intentions. And so the purpose of asking clarifying questions of one another is just to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what you need or what other people in your group need. So I want you to, coaches, if you can screen share your Google Docs, and participants, if you can really hone in on that middle column of what do you need from each other, because this is where you're going to be kind of really focusing in on your agreement. So for instance, somebody says, you know, what I need from my team is patience, whereas other people say what I need from my team is action, right? Those two things kind of sound contradictory. So you might need to ask clarifying questions of like, hey, person who said I need action, like what does that actually mean or look like? Because I also need patience to process information. So it's this moment where you can kind of work through some potentially contradicting needs and really find solutions before they lead to conflicts and misunderstandings. So coaches, you can share first. If there's a question that you have, you can ask it. If you don't, you can pass it on to the next person and call on the next person to share and discuss. Okay, so I'm going to give about 5 or 6 minutes here. Let's say 5, Daniel, and then we'll do a minute to come back. Yeah, I will see you in a bit. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for engaging in those conversations and asking those clarifying questions of one another. I was popping into the breakout rooms and just hearing some really rich conversations. So thank you all for being open to asking those clarifying questions, and the coaches for prompting them. So the last step in this process for creating your team agreements is, it's called agreements, right? So we need to come to an agreement. So we are going to be doing an agreement round. And so basically what that means is we're going to go around the room in your small groups and see if everybody agrees to the agreement. And you're really going to be focusing on that middle column of what I need from my team. And you're really going to be thinking to yourself, like, can I provide these things? Like what my team needs, is this a way that I can show up for them and commit to and strive to do my best? Like there might be times where you make mistakes or you need reminders, but overall, like you want to create this experience and provide this experience for your team, and you want that for yourself also. So for the agreement round, we're going to go around the room, and if you agree to strive to do your best, you're going to say, I agree. If you don't agree, that's okay too. You can say, I don't agree, and you can list the specific agreement that you want to have further conversation with. further conversation on. So again, if you're a participant, you're going to be focusing on that middle column of what you need from your team, and is that something you can provide to your teammates? If you're a coach, you're going to be thinking about the middle column and also the column from what they need from you as a coach. Can you provide those things? Can you commit to doing your best and striving to do your best in that area? Okay, so coaches start first. Do you agree? Can you agree? And then go around the room and get people's either I agree or I disagree and want to talk more about this specific one. Okay, so we're going to have 5 minutes for this specific round. If there's more clarifying questions you need to ask, now would be the time to do so before the agreement round passes. Welcome back, everybody. Breakout rooms are closing in about 20 seconds. All right, welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you're able to wrap up the team agreements process. So if you're, I'd like you all to go down to the bottom of the Zoom screen. You're going to click the reactions button and then give me a thumbs up if your group was able to reach agreement on your agreement. Nice, lots of thumbs up. Okay, well, let's go to reactions and let's give ourselves a round of applause. Nice. Yay, awesome. All right. So we are now going to take a quick break, everybody. We're going to have a 10-minute break. But before we do that, so just to wrap up this piece around team agreements, this is going to be your foundation for working together. So every time you meet in the workshops, you will, your coach will, you'll review the agreements before you get started, just so it can stay fresh on people's minds and have a reminder of how you all want to show up in your work together. And as we move forward, I just want to acknowledge that we will be engaging in difficult conversations on difficult and really complex topics. And so as you all move forward with your teams, some things to keep in mind as you lean into the discomfort of the difficult conversations, because they will be difficult, is try your best to assume best intention. If somebody says something or does something and you're not sure about it, or it triggers you a little bit, try to assume best intention and try to seek clarity in those moments. If you do encounter something even more challenging, feel free to request support from me directly. You can private chat me in the chat box. You can click the ask for help button if you are in a breakout room and something happens, or you can email our coordinating team and they are happy to support you and guide you through some next steps. The last one of best practice is make sure not to let it fester. So let us help you, and in preparing for this project together, the coordinating team and I acknowledge that things might come up. So we have set aside like time and resources for conflict resolution or facilitation if that is ever necessary in our process. So I can support with facilitating conversations and working through misunderstandings and disagreements. So we just want to make sure all voices are heard as well as perspectives are valued. Okay, so just know that we are here for you and we want to make sure the work moves forward in a way that feels good for everybody. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. It's 6:37. We'll see you back at 6:47. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we are going to go ahead and resume our session here. Hope you had a chance to get some water and maybe have a snack or possibly some dinner. But now that we have taken a break, we are going to be moving into part 2 of our session today, which is packaging your challenge, that will be led by Heather.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Let me share my screen and then we will get going. Can everybody see that? Thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm Heather Hiscox and I'm the founder of Pause for Change. And we've been working with Hayward off and on for about 6 years. And it's so exciting to be back and working on this project. I just wanted to have this slide as a grounding to what drives our work. We believe that we need to slow down to go fast. We need new skills in this work, and we need new voices in this work. And so what we really help organizations do is to address challenges in less time, using fewer resources to achieve greater impact. So hopefully you'll see that at work. So what drives the why is all about uncertainty. We've had this slide for years, before pandemic, before everything that's happened in the past year and a half. But we have more and more uncertainty, and we have to have different skills to address it. And normally what we do is this: we see a problem, we make a plan, we take action, we get results. That's what folks are rewarded on doing. And the other, ideas are useless, execution's everything. Our brain actually secretes a chemical that makes us feel better when we make a decision and we choose a path forward. But to this, I say no. That's the old way of working, and it can be very wasteful and miss the mark. And what this looks like is this giant triangle, and it can be very wasteful. Someone has an opinion, there's an idea, there's research and recommendations, decisions are made, there's all this design. And at the very end, we go to stakeholders who are often community members and say, ta-da, here's your program or service or something we created for you. And the community is like, yeah, I don't want that. Or you're not talking to me, and what? Oh, can you imagine, right? All that investment in time and energy that can just cause so many issues. So we're going to do what you see on the bottom. We're going to start with talking to stakeholders first. We're going to find out what they feel, what their ideas are, what they've already been doing, what they're working towards. And that's going to help us generate those ideas. And then before we build anything, we're actually going to test it. We're going to experiment and try to break our solutions before we try to put them into recommendations. We try to test what assumptions are embedded within these solutions before we move forward. So some of the tools we're going to use, you already were introduced to Miro. We're going to be using Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets for collaboration, and your coach is here to help you. And we have lots of technical support, so please reach out for help. The electronic documentation, what's really key about that is if you don't write it down, it's as if it didn't happen, because over this many weeks together and this time, we're going to forget what some of those things mean. So make sure if you're writing a sticky note or you're writing something into Google Docs, that it is something that someone else could read and understand. If it just says trust, none of us will know what that means and what we meant by it. So you'll see that when we go to our breakout rooms, we're going to have lots of activities that are time boxed. So if it says 15 minutes, we're going to suck you back through the internet back to us. So be mindful about that. And I love that you've done your team agreement work. And so we're really looking for commitment around learning. We're committing to keep going to find the answers. We may not all agree 100%. We're going to have really great constructive and kind conversations, but we want to keep moving forward to learn as much as possible. So there's a new tool that is on the Miro board that your coach is going to use for now, but I just want to show it to you. It's called our learning journey map. It's like a snapshot of everything you're going to learn. So today what we're going to focus on is just this top part. Looking at the challenge, packaging it, identifying a stakeholder to focus on first, and some key unknowns that will drive the work forward. So I'm just going to touch lightly on what the components are of packaging the challenge before I let you jump into the activity. So what motivates this first step is that we have to think about working as a team. And I like to ask these questions. What if we created value for each other? What if we made each other's lives easier and we shared understanding? And what if we learned together? And what if we shared power? It's really important when we're trying to solve challenges and issues that we acknowledge that we're sharing power and we're sharing knowledge. The other part of packaging the challenge is around clarity. I find so many organizations just form teams and start trying to address a challenge when people aren't even grounded. They're not even on the same page. So we're going to give you time to make sure you're all on the same page. So we want alignment and clarity, and that we're sharing information. So it's real simple in this first step. What's our challenge? Who's our stakeholder? So I'm going to talk you through the activity and then you'll start working. So you already have challenge statements that the coordinating committee put together that you'll see. They're in your Google Doc. I just want you to read through those as a team. I want you to tweak anything you need to tweak, have conversation. And the goal is that we want you to have that shared understanding. It doesn't have to be the most perfect statement. I don't want you to get caught up on wordsmithing and like finding the perfect word. I just want you to reach alignment. And you're probably going to keep tweaking, so it's okay. And then the stakeholders. We want to brainstorm a list of all the stakeholders that are impacted by that challenge. So think of every person that's internal to the city, who's in the community, that's impacted by your challenge. And then we can't solve for everyone at once. One size fits all does not usually work. So we really want to think about, who do we want to serve first? Who do we want to deeply understand first, knowing that we are going to focus on other stakeholders in this process, but pick one. And your coach is then going to put that onto your learning journey map later, so it'll be reflected there. So you're going to be typing this into the Google Doc. Your coach is going to help you with that. But consider who you think is really having the most pain out of your stakeholder group, and let's refine your challenge statement. So you're going to have 15 minutes to do this. The breakout rooms are going to be set up. We'll send you little love notes letting you know about how the time is going. But that's really the goal of the activity. So before we go, I'll stop sharing. Any questions from anyone before we go into the activity? Oh, Jessica, you raised your hand.
Yeah. So are we just picking one stakeholder during this session, or are we like focusing on one at a time, but identifying the different stakeholders?
I want you to create a list of all the different stakeholders, but I want you to choose one to start with.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else? All right, go ahead and open up the breakout rooms for us, Daniel, if you can, and you'll have 15 minutes and I'll hop in and we'll check on you. All right, welcome back, everyone. I know that felt really hard. I was jumping into the different rooms, and one of the most uncomfortable pieces is picking one, like one stakeholder. How can we pick one? There's so many. But what I have learned in doing this work over 8 years is that when we try to create solutions for everyone, it doesn't serve everyone, right? We have to really get focused and specific, and solutions that you might design for one stakeholder group, it might help other people. There might be similar pain points and challenges that can address, but we have to get more specific when we design solutions, especially around difficult challenges. So that's really the rationale of getting focused, but we're not forgetting those other stakeholders, right? They are still top of mind, and as we evolve through the process, we'll get there. So I want to jump in with talking about our next step. Is there anyone that has a burning question that they want to share in the chat, or can we keep moving?
Well, our group was not able to find consensus,
Okay.
and I'm wondering if we're going to follow up on this. I feel like a little bit of like I'm hanging right now.
Thank you for sharing that. I will join your team when we go to the next breakout, and we'll see if we can get alignment to help you get ready for the next piece. Thank you. Okay.
Our group, and Heather, our group also, we struggled coming to a consensus, and that's just Team B.
Team B. Okay. Okay. All right. We will get you where you need to go for the next step. Promise. All right. So I'm going to begin sharing again. I want to show you the next piece. Okay. So we have our refinement. We still have time. We can work on some of that. The next piece that we want to focus on is what drives this step, this skill, is that we often just go building solutions without identifying what we know and what we don't know. So I want to encourage you to think about, what if we identified what was uncertain? What if we assume we were wrong? And what if success was not building certain solutions? About half of the projects that organizations bring my team on to address, we do not build those solutions that they have in mind, because once we get them in front of the community and stakeholders, it's not a right match. So I hope that we don't create this face. I love this image of the Hulk, because this is what happens when you don't identify what you don't know and you don't listen to stakeholders. We don't want that, right? We've all felt this. And there's so much that we don't even know we don't know, right? There's that green slice. There's the what we can identify we don't know. And there's the other stuff that's just going to bite us in the butt later, which it always will. And so especially those of you that are staff members, or those of you that are very experienced in the community, I want to encourage you all to have a beginner's mind, knowing that there's so many possibilities and so much learning to be had, and that's part of your journey together. And to do that journey, we have to be open. We have to be vulnerable to learning. And that's really where innovation and change and creativity come from. So this is just an illustration to show what happens. Like I said, 50% of those projects don't work. You have 3 bowls of food for 3 cats, and you imagine they'll just walk right up. And this is what happens. People do not participate and respond in the ways that we anticipate they will. And so we have to listen intently, and we have to test those solutions to get to those answers. And we're all biased, right? We don't mean to be biased. We don't want to be, but we are. We have our own lived experience. We have our own perspectives, our own elements of privilege. So it's our job to really help each other on that journey of learning. So I hope that we can do that in a really kind and supportive way, reinforcing all the great skills that Tiffany reinforced. And what happens, and I don't know how many of you have seen this ladder of inference, but we have an observation at the bottom there. We pull out the data that we want from an experience or what we're seeing. We attribute meaning. We start to add assumptions. We draw those conclusions, which drive our actions and our behaviors. And what's tricky is that once we have an established belief, we start to select data that reinforces that belief, that confirmation bias. So we're going to be working as teams to really identify what are in fact facts and what we do know, and what are the things that we really don't know that might have embedded assumptions. So the next step that we're going to focus on is thinking about, what do we know for sure, and what do we still need to learn about our challenge and about our stakeholder. So these questions here are just to get your brain juicy and thinking, what do we know about the challenge? What are the symptoms that we're seeing? What is going on there? What's been tried? What's working and what's not? And then around your stakeholder, how do you think they would talk about it in their own words? What do you think they want? What's in their way? So you might ask yourself these questions and say, I really don't know what they've already tried. I don't know what the community's done, let's say, or I don't know what HPD really wants as their outcome and their perspective. Or you might say, no, I have a pretty clear idea of, what the background is and what's been tried. And so you want to try to spend time thinking about what you think you know and what you still need to learn. So we're going to be back in Miro, and your coach will be there to support you. It's going to be a lot less chaotic because we're just going to be a little small group of you working in Miro. So we'll put the link in just a second. I just want to remind you about clicking on the frames in the lower left-hand corner. And if it looks collapsed like you see there, just click on those double arrows and it will open it back up. And this giant red arrow is just showing that each of you have an unknowns and knowns piece that's the frame to go to. So just make sure you go to your group. So I just want to show you what that looks like. So make sure you're in the right room, the right Miro board, so you're not putting knowns on someone else's board. And these same questions that I had on that slide are over to the left-hand side. So if you need something to stimulate your thinking, just go to the left side of the board. Have it stimulate your ideas. Same kind of thing where you're just grabbing stickies from the top. We're going to use blue for knowns, purple for unknowns. Just grab those and pull those down and double click to type. What your coach is going to do is they're going to, as you start to put stickies, they're going to do what Daniel and I were doing at the end of workshop 1, kind of sliding them around and putting them in similar areas. So go ahead, you're going to have time to brainstorm on your own and then work as a team. So we're going to have, let me just double check. Yeah, we're going to have 25 minutes total for this next step. I want you to, once we get your teams that need a little bit of alignment work, we'll get through that quickly. And then I want you to have some silent working time where you're working individually on your own for 5 minutes to think about knowns and unknowns on your own. And then as your coaches are putting those into groupings, as you place them on the board, you'll then have time as a group to look at those And what I want you to do, the goal for this activity before we move forward, is I want you to identify your top 3 unknowns, your top 3 areas of uncertainty. Because for the next step, that's going to help us write really great questions that we're going to ask our stakeholder. And that's going to be our homework. And we'll talk about that in detail. So, well, we're not doing a break right now. Let me stop sharing. And I'm going to post the link to Miro, and you're going to open up those frames. And you are going to go to the unknown known for your group. I'm going to put that in the chat now. And I will come to those 2 rooms. But with those teams, just try to take about 5 minutes to get to consensus. Pick your stakeholder you want to focus on. Let's refine that challenge the best we can. And then you can jump into the rest of that activity. So here's the link to Miro. Go ahead and open that. And then Daniel's going to send you to your breakout rooms, and I'll make visits to those 2 rooms. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. So I'm just checking in with where we are, and we are at the next break point. So just one thing I want to wrap up with this is that, you know, we listed our unknowns in this short time. We listed our knowns. Over the process of talking to stakeholders and talking to one another and thinking of solutions, you're going to have knowns, things that you thought you knew that you're going to say, oh gosh, we need to scoot that over. We actually don't know that. And you're going to think of more areas of uncertainty and more unknowns, because that's part of the messy learning process, right? So that will keep evolving and can be a place to keep putting those, like a parking lot, to store them, to revisit them. So what we're going to do is can we take an 8-minute break? Would that be all right if we shaved off a little bit so we have time at the end to make sure you do your strategy planning? So let's do an 8-minute break. So we'll be back at 7:53. And then when we get back, we're going to start talking about how to engage with stakeholders. So we'll see you at 7:53. Thanks, everybody. Okay, come on back, everyone. If you're back, turn on your video so we can see that you've returned. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for coming back and for shortening that break a little bit so we have a little more space to go over all the content we want to go over. Okay, it looks like most of us are back. Yeah. I wanna honor and acknowledge the coaches, and we had a huddle while you were on the break, and I definitely want to acknowledge that this feels uncomfortable. It feels fast. It feels too fast, and the reason why we do that is that humans will fill the amount of time that they are given to work on a project, have a conversation. So if we said you have 1 hour to write your questions, you would fill that hour. But if I tell you you have 15 minutes, you'll get it done in 15 minutes. So part of it is pushing you beyond sort of the expected boundaries of how long things should take. It will feel uncomfortable, but it's an evolutionary process. And our goal is to let you experience the skills firsthand and have a touch on them, and then we're going to use that over the process. So I want to acknowledge that. And when you have items on your knowns and unknowns, some of the uncertainties, you can go find a report, you can go find data, like there is the information out there. So you'll have plenty of time to not only talk to stakeholders, but to do research. So the stuff that it can be known, you'll have time to go find that, and your coach and all of our amazing team will support you in doing that. And then if you find yourself drawn to solutions, if you find that you wrote a sticky or you have a sticky on your knowns and unknowns that's really solution oriented, just maybe kind of put that off to the side, because that's what we're going to ideate and focus on after we've talked to stakeholders. That's going to be the focus of the next workshop, is really around listening, integrating what we've learned, and thinking about what solutions would help. So before we move on to focusing on understanding stakeholders and empathy, Are there any questions that anyone wants to bring up? Go ahead and raise your hand. We have a couple minutes so we can answer a question or two. Okay, I'm not seeing any. If any of them pop up, please reach out. Oh, okay, we have a question. Barsha?
Hi, so, we have right now prior, and maybe this is me just being a little slow. We picked up 3 unknowns, right? So are we just going to focus on those 3 unknowns, or we'll at any point explore the other unknowns, like in long term?
We will definitely explore those other unknowns. The reason why we prioritize those that are most critical and most important is those will guide the next step of your drafting your questions. Often a lot of the uncertainties are entangled and enmeshed with each other. So you'll find that when you do the interviews, you'll start to have some of those answers, and you're going to keep revisiting that. You're going to keep examining those other areas of uncertainty, because the goal of the process is to eliminate uncertainty, not to jump to solution, but to really learn as much as you need to learn so you can actually recommend a great solution.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a very new process because, we all are so used to thinking we know everything, and even not pausing and thinking we know everything and jumping into it. So this is really like, I'm just going to just trust the process and follow it and see where it takes us to. But thank you.
I love that. You said the perfect thing that we always say, trust the process, trust the process. And any of our coaches and those that have been through this before, they'll tell you like, yeah, you just got to trust it because it feels wonky. But you get to the answers. You really do. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that question. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. We are going to focus on understanding our stakeholders. So the guiding questions, can you see my screen? Does that work? Yeah. Okay. The guiding questions for this are: what if we could experience another person's perspective? What if we could understand why? What if we knew what people did, not just what they said? So I'm going to show this video. Let me go back. Hold on. Let me go back and cue this up. This is a video about empathy. Many of you have heard of Brene Brown, right? She's very popular, and her talks about vulnerability and empathy. And so this is a video that really illustrates that, that thinking, and I hope it will get us grounded. So hopefully this will work.
So what is empathy?
Is that working?
And why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay. So what I like about that video is, empathy is not perfect, right? It is not the cure-all. It is not the magic pill. But what it does is it provides space to hear another person. And so these are just some pieces I want to talk through about the interview basics. Oh, I'm pulling up the chat. Oh, I'm glad you like it. Yay. If you just Google Brene Brown and empathy, that's like the top hit you'll see. So your questions, as I said, are based on your unknowns. We want to be open-ended because we want to hear people's stories, right? I'll show you some examples of like not the great questions, but we really want to hear what people's experiences have been and are. And listening is hard. Active listening is hard. Tiffany did such a great job modeling active listening in workshop 1 when you all would share comments and she would state it back to you. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, we want to make sure that we are present and we are 100% focused on just listening when we're talking to folks. We're asking the question and then we are zipping it. So we're not interrupting. We're not there to solve the problem. We're just there to listen. And I'll say this a couple times, as you're writing notes from your conversations with people, think of it like a transcript. What I see people do, which is not what we want to do because it introduces their own personal bias and filter, is they'll have an interview and then they'll leave and go, well, what I think they meant was this. And we don't want the person's experience with your experience on top of it, right? We want the purity of that experience to be recorded so you can share it responsibly and honorably with your team, right? We want to honor that person's journey and story. And the other fallacy and problem that people have is they love to ask future forward questions. So if we created this program, would you sign up? If we had this resource fair, would you show up? 99% of the time people will say, sure, yeah, because I guess we're like raised to be polite to others, right? But only 2 people might show up. So what we want is people not to imagine their future and predict their own behavior. We want them to answer questions that are retrospective. So the last time you tried to get access to social services, tell me what that was like. Where did you go? Who did you talk to? What worked and what didn't? If you had a magic wand, what would you wish that experience would have been like? So we want to be retrospective in our questions instead of prospective. And this is just a slide. I was teaching a bunch of journalists how to do empathy interviews, which is funny because they talk to people all the time, but they have a hard time with it. We don't want to ask the questions that you see under gather info. Those are very like data point driven. So they might say 7 years, sure I would, blah, 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 here's the agencies. We want to ask questions that get to like, how long have you been a partner? What has that been like? What's the best? What's the worst? Can you give me examples of other really valuable experiences? Like you're really trying to get people to talk. And with the caveat that some folks may not have a lot of trust, right? So do your absolute best to make a safe space and reinforce that listening. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you go back to your rooms with your group. You're going to look at your prioritized areas of uncertainty. And in your Google Doc, you're going to craft questions. So you're all going to start with the same questions just for fidelity. And, we can compare across people's answers, but you will absolutely add stuff as you talk to someone. If you're on question 2 and someone says something that is so amazing or sad or something, you can absolutely go down that road with them. You can ask some follow-up questions, just write down what other questions emerged. Or if you ask a question and it felt really weird when you said it, like it's not worded well after all, go ahead and just make a note of how you change that because you can share that with your team. So I want you to come up with 5 questions. You might have more if you have time, but look at those areas of uncertainty and craft questions that get you to those answers. Sometimes you might want to start broad and then go narrow. Like, tell me about this. And then if you have specific things you want to understand, you might want to go a little bit more specific in your later questions. So before we go to breakout, does anyone have any questions for me about the next steps? And of course, you'll have your coaches to support as well.
Heather, could you help us just identify our last two unknowns before we move on?
Sure, what group are you again?
E.
E. Okay, I'll meet you over there. All right. Daniel, can you open up the breakout rooms, please? Everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. Great job getting an early first draft of the questions.
Is anyone else? Did Heather freeze? Okay.
Heather just froze.
I was like, was it me or Heather? Let me text her and tell her that she's frozen in case she doesn't know. But I think, Daniel, do you want to share the homework while we're waiting for her to come back in?
Sure.
Okay, because we're at 8:21.
Yeah, so Heather was going to go over this, but I'll do it real quick for everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my Google Drive?
Thank you, Daniel, for jumping in.
Oh, all right, Heather's back. I can hand it off back.
Good use of time. Good use of time. I do that. Sorry, I don't know what the heck happened. Okay, you want to finish what you were saying, Daniel?
Oh,
back in?
I just unshared. No, please just jump back in, Heather. You got this.
So what I was saying, I don't know what part you heard. Someone had asked, like, is this what it's always going to be like when we have our team meetings? We're going to have this like super rapid fire 10 minutes for this. The answer is no. You will have, let's say, an hour-long meeting where just your team, you're going to dive back into this, have support from your coach, talk more about these deep, meaty issues, right? You're going to have more time and space. This is just meant to expose you to the skills. So, when we're identifying uncertainty, do we really know that? I don't know if we know that. Let's add a question. Let's go get some research. Let's go get some data. So it's just exposing you to the skills. So what we want to do next is I just want to share what the homework is going to look like. And you will have time to work with your coach. Let me go back a couple. Okay. So your goal is that you're going to interview a minimum of 3 people before our next meeting that we have as a group, our workshop 3. And these are just some suggestions of what to consider after you talk to someone. So you do your interview. Most interviews will take about 15-20 minutes. It just depends on the person. But you want to see, like, what emotion did you notice? Write that down with your notes. Have some aha moments. Like, what did you learn from talking to someone? Maybe circle that in your notes. Anything that was surprising, anything that came up again and again, and any additional questions that surface. And I'm going to send you this full deck. You'll have all the slides, so you'll have a reminder of what to think about when you're going to do your interviews. And you'll have time as a team virtually to solidify those questions. So again, think of your notes like a transcript. Be as specific as you can. You can highlight some quotes that really capture the feeling and the statements that were shared by that individual. At the bottom of your notes, so Daniel was sharing, he has created with your name attached to it a Google Doc where you can add your notes from each of your interviews. At the bottom of each interview, maybe pull out just a couple bullet points, 3 to 4 ahas, because those are what your coach can then turn into sticky notes for you to compare on Miro and start to see some themes when we brainstorm solutions. And also let the individuals know, ask permission. Would it be all right if I was back in touch with you as we learn more and we think about solutions? Could I circle back? Could I come back to talk to you some more? So let them know you may come back and get permission to do so. So as I said, we're going to interview a minimum of 3 stakeholders. The interviews are really important. You will run into scheduling challenges. This is COVID. People are, overwhelmed and busy. Try your absolute best, and any help you need, and keep your coach up to date as well. Like, oh, I want to get my 4 people, but 3 of them just went on, I don't know, leave or something. Go and be in touch with them so they can help support you, because they have a whole list of individuals that have already agreed to be connected to this process that want to be interviewed, so they can connect you. So what I'm going to skip this piece. What you're going to do is you need to schedule your team meeting. You need to find a time that you all can connect. And I wish we had time to do that now, to come up with and everyone pull out their calendar. but each of your coaches is going to reach out to you. They're going to get your availability, maybe do a doodle poll, something a little bit easier than, herding cats with everyone's calendar. You're going to find a time to have your team meeting, and then the coaches will be in communication about solidifying your questions. You all will have a link to the Google Doc. You can add some comments, come up with your final questions that you feel comfortable asking. And then in each of your team folders, you have a spreadsheet that's like a tracking spreadsheet. So, if I was doing an interview, I would write, Heather, I'm going to talk to these 3 individuals. Here's my scheduled appointment times or meetings when I'm going to connect with them. And it's just a way to keep track. So you're all not talking to the exact same people. So you want to put the names. I see a question, RT, will there be a part of this process to ensure we aren't biasing our testing with only interviews that have pre-agreed? Yes, with your coaches, they will help you frame how to reach stakeholders. So they have resources, but also you can connect with individuals that you might have in your networks. Just have that conversation as a team to strategize around how you're going to do the outreach. And that's a great question. Yeah, you're not just talking to people like, yes, I want to do it. You might talk to folks that, may be more disenfranchised in this process. So that's a great question. So coaches, I know I'm leaving the work that you're going to do with your teams offline, and the coaches and I will hang out after this call just to make sure they don't have any questions. But before we wrap up, I just want to talk about what we've accomplished today. I know it's been rapid, but you've done so much. You have become aligned around your challenge statement, and that's going to keep evolving. You've identified all the different stakeholders impacted. It's not one size fits all. You have prioritized who you're going to reach out to, which stakeholder group first. You've identified uncertainties and drafted those questions. So you've done a ton of work in this short time. And Tiffany asked a great question of me. So each of you should try to have a goal of at least 3 interviews. So if you have 7 people on your team, you'll have 21 interviews theoretically, right? You're all going to do your absolute best. And the interviews are really important because it's what the building blocks of what we're going to focus on next moving forward. So before we wrap up, I want to ask if there are any questions, and your coaches will be here too, but any questions right now that are really standing out to you? Jessica.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm a little confused. So for our group, we're doing like individuals experiencing mental health crises as our stakeholder. So is there a list of pre-identified stakeholders for us to reach out to? Or are you saying that we are to find each of us 3 people to do that with?
Talk to your coach specifically, and they helped, form these challenges. So they've already been thinking about, partners they might have in the community, other resources with which to connect you. So lean on your coach and they will come up with a plan for your team.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I wanted to answer a question that I had gotten before, which was for there's a huge value to talking to people under 18, and one of our members have brought that up. I'm trying to get an answer from our city attorneys about what kind of for anyone over 18, just the verbal consent is good. For under 18, I'm still trying to get an answer, and I'll get that to the groups as soon as possible.
That's great. That's great. So the follow-up will be happening via email. We'll send you next steps and the deck and all of that. Talk to your coach for any questions. They'll be in constant communication with Tiffany and I. I want to thank you for participating and trusting the process, as was said earlier. I know it feels awkward and rushed, but you have so much learning that you've already documented that we're going to keep diving in on. So before we leave, I want to hear what are you most looking forward to accomplishing before the next workshop? Like, what do you really want to try to understand more? Please put that in the chat. I would love to hear what you're thinking about what you're really looking forward to before the next workshop.
Heather, is this to you or to everyone?
To everyone. You can write a personal one to me if you like, but to everyone. Yeah. So connecting with your team and strategizing, identifying the exact problem we're trying to come up with solutions for, navigate through Miro, getting to know your team members and their experiences, your next team meeting, working with a team, fine tuning tonight's work. Yes, this is going to be a process of iteration and evolution. Working with the best team ever. Oh, Tommy, that's so nice. Working with everyone. Team is great perspective. You all work so well together tonight. It was so impressive and really inspiring. Fine tuning. Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you. We are a minute over, and I know you all have life and family and fun and work to get back to. So I appreciate you so much. Please reach out if we can support you in any way, and we'll get you ready for next steps. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, guys.